I remember back when Infinite Warfare's announcement trailer dropped. Everyone online was decrying it as the coming of the Antichrist, while I was sitting there, looking at the announcement with a glass half full perspective and not only open to a new direction for Call of Duty, but genuinely expecting it to be good, if not a modern classic and not dissimilar to the earlier entries in the series, only to be proven wrong. Now, history has repeated itself with the new game from Bethesda and Machine Games, Wolfenstein Youngblood. I wasn't expecting this to be a modern classic like the New Order, but dear lord, I was not expecting this game to be such a poorly written chore of a game to play that's almost completely devoid of any fun. Taking place 20 years after the events of the New Colossus, it's now the 1980s and America has been freed from the Third Reich, but BJ Blazkowicz is missing and no one knows where he is. When his twin daughters discover that he's been in contact with the French resistance and gone to help liberate France, the two daughters do what any reasonable person would do. They steal a helicopter and power armor, go to France and help the resistance so they can find their dad. Now, since this is the first Wolfenstein ever to not feature Blazkowicz as the protagonist, you'd think the writer would have taken care to make them as likable or as compelling as their dad. And you're wrong. These are some of the least likable protagonists I've seen in ages for any storytelling medium. Both of their personalities begin and end with vulgar tomboy, with lip service to the quiet girl archetype and the butch lesbo stereotype. They never undergo any substantial development or have greater depth revealed to them. They're not even entertaining, with their antics in the cinematics being dull and the in-game dialogue, which is meant to be funny, being teeth-grindingly annoying instead, and sounds more like what an adult trying to get down with the kids back in the 80s thought cool kids sounded like.
You're a goddamn champ!
However, the issues with the narrative don't begin and end with just unlikable protagonists. The supporting characters are even less interesting, and there's no real antagonist until the very end. Instead, you're working towards breaking into these three bases so you can get access to a secret lab. There's also the 80s aesthetic the devs chose for the narrative and world, which just doesn't feel organic. It feels more like it was chosen because 80s nostalgia is popular right now. There's no shaking the feeling that a 70s aesthetic would have felt much more appropriate. But perhaps the biggest issue with the story is that there's no reason why BJ couldn't have been the lead. The story would have still worked, perhaps even better with us playing as BJ coming to France and connecting with the resistance, then teaming up with a fighter named Jacques von Jean-Claude to carry out the missions with. BJ would get to fulfill his agenda, with Jacques asking questions on behalf of the audience while also offering the comedic relief. But no, instead we get twin sisters who cheer and vomit after killing their first Nazi, and a narrative with the tone of girls just want to have fun, crossed with Tarantino.
You okay? Oh, I think I'm fine. Oh my god. Oh my god, I got his brains in my mouth! Water, give me water!
Youngblood's other big claim to fame is that it's also the first game in the series with a co-op focus. Unlike the story, this has been well realised, and solo play is more than possible, with enemies that often require two players or a buddy AI to work together and flank, and the inclusion of the pep system, which is a nice addition where you can cheer on the other player and give each other small boosts to things like health, armor, and other stats like speed. The level design as well is more open-ended, thanks to input from Arcane Studios, encouraging exploration for secrets, collectibles, and of course to get the drop on enemies for a tactical advantage. However, all of this is undermined by a huge number of bugbears and design issues. Enemies are super bullet spongy, thanks to them having insane amounts of armor that needs to be worn down by one of two ammo types for maximum damage. This results in gameplay slowing to a crawl, with enemies taking multiple gunshots that in any other game would have taken them out in 2 or 3, and this information is communicated poorly, with the HUD cues being beyond piss poor, forcing you to stop everything and try to confirm that you have the right gun equipped for the one enemy in a mob whose armor demands to be taken out with different ammo, which is of course juxtaposed by a weird imbalance with the melee attacks, where they deal insane amounts of damage that can circumvent armor ratings, creating almost comedic moments where you're running around whacking Nazis in a whack-a-mole game. There's also an issue with enemy spawning as well, where when you leave an immediate area in a level for another, they will respawn in their entirety as soon as you return. And this becomes particularly annoying when you're just exploring for secrets, or you're trying to do these dynamic secondary objectives that can appear at random, and you just want to get from point A to point B. You'll also get very familiar with the levels and their layout because Machine Games made barely any of the bloody things. After finishing a mission and selecting a new one, it's almost constant how the next one is going to take place in the exact same location as the previous one. And this applies to both story and secondary missions, so after your first hour with Youngblood, you've already seen almost every friggin' location in the game. Because you need to do as many missions as possible, or else the twins are too low level to tackle the tougher missions and enemies. So you're literally forced to grind in order to progress, and the cherry on top of all of this is that you can't pause the game in single player. Granted, this has been addressed in a patch recently, but all of this makes me question just how much QA testing the game received, something that really came to mind when during the second brother mission, I was able to complete it without fighting the boss or even shooting at it once. Now, if you've seen other reviews of this game, you may have heard other reviewers decry this game for becoming a looter shooter, like Borderlands or Destiny, but that is not true. Machine Games did include RPG-style progression, but there is no loot system. Instead, you unlock new attachments for guns by using them, and these attachments can radically alter how weapons function and their in-game appearance. On top of that, there's a great variety to them, and it encourages mixing, matching, and experimenting. And it's possibly the only mechanic in the game that's been implemented flawlessly. To go along with this, there's also a perk system that ties into the progression, where you can use skill points to unlock things like health upgrades and new offensive options. The issue here is that it needlessly replaced a perfectly fine alternative. Back in New Order, you could unlock perks by just hitting milestones, giving a sense of achievement whenever you improved BJ. Now, you need to grind not only for upgrades, but just to get your hands on things that made New Order's shooting so much fun. I'm talking about things like dual wielding or an inventory slot for heavy duty weapons, stuff that in the other games you could use right off the bat. But let's close out this review with a nice little discussion on the lovely issue of microtransactions, something I know Wolfenstein fans have been clamoring for since the 2009 game. Bethesda promised there'd be no pay-to-win microtransactions and only cosmetic ones. For the most part, they did stay true to that statement. Different skins for both twins and the weapons can be acquired either with premium currency called gold bars or with silver coins you find while playing. The problem I found was that, once again, they didn't use New Order's milestone setup and expand upon it to also unlock these cosmetics. But this setup makes me believe that Bethesda chose the path of least fulfillment for the sake of maximum potential profit, something that's been reinforced by a recent revelation. On the game's Steam page for a while, it stated that gold bars could be used to buy not just skins, but boosters as well. And when this news went viral, Bethesda changed the description, correcting what they claimed was an error. While it is possible this was the result of someone just typing in the wrong words, there's also the strong possibility that Bethesda was planning to expand the transactions down the line to include boosters, not dissimilar to what Activision did to Black Ops 4 or more recently Crash Team Racing. I can't speak for everyone, but I can see this news as a make or break factor for some people who are thinking about grabbing this game.
Shut down, Jess! Let's get you back in action, sis.
It just boggles my mind how steep the decline in quality from New Colossus has been for Youngblood. Sure, New Colossus had a slew of problems all its own, but it still came away as fun to play, but this has almost nothing to make up for its faults, and it makes me worry for the future of Wolfenstein. I hope that after this blunder, Bethesda either gets a different team to handle the next entry, or cracks the whip and gets Machine Games back to making something like the New Order, before they scare the fans off for good. But I can't help but wonder if the damage has already been done, and it's too late to make up for Youngblood's failings. Alright, I hope you guys enjoyed this review. It was awesome to put this together, but it was not fun to play this game, let me tell ya. Anyway, if you guys really enjoyed this review, then please feel free to hit subscribe. And for the next game review, I'm going to be doing a showcase taking a look at some high quality horror games, both new and some stuff from my backlog. And for movie reviews, I'm going to be taking a look at Dragon Ball Super Broly and the all new Rocko's Modern Life special. I got all that and more coming up, so please stick around.